The clock has started.
I feel fine.
Godspeed, John Glenn.
I feel the liftoff.
This is a new and strange environment.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Okay, welcome to Slightly Off Axis podcast. I'm your host, Ken Otto. We look at the history of the space program on the Space Coast of Florida, Brevard County. We do this by interviewing space workers, longtime residents, or those who are one and the same. Tonight's guest is Earline Smiley, who worked 43 and a half years on the space program at Kennedy Space Center. So if our audience would please welcome Earline, who will tell us the story of her experience. Welcome, Earline.
Well, thank you.
Great to speak with you tonight. And as I've prepared a few questions for you, so we'll go right into those. What was your title and responsibilities working at the launch pad?
My title was quality inspector, and my responsibilities were like inspecting the critical systems and devices at the pad A and B. That was during the shuttle program. And later during the shuttle program, I became lead. So my responsibility as a lead was to schedule and monitor all of the duties that were done by the other inspectors.
So you had a little bit of an advancement in your 43 and a half years, as one would expect.
Yes.
You worked at Kennedy Space Center, obviously working on the pad, but did you ever work somewhere else while doing this job?
Do you mean with another company or area?
Well, I was thinking that, like, did they ever send you out to Vandenberg to do anything with that pad or any of the other pads?
Oh, no.
Okay. This next question is a interesting one, and kind of just want to get this one out of the way. Everyone can clearly see that you're a woman, and being 43 and a half years there, your career spans the Apollo to the Space Shuttle program. Was your gender or ethnicity ever in the way at your job? Did anyone make it difficult for you because you were a woman or because you were not the same ethnicity as they are?
No, my work and working around the guys, it was not difficult. Matter of fact, we were more family. And I guess it was because we were together and worked a lot of overtime. I didn't have any problem. No problem at all.
That's very good. How many launches did you witness in person? And you don't have to give a specific number. You can just say that you didn't witness any, or that you witnessed some of the ones that occurred during your tenure, or that you saw most of them, or that you saw all of them. So how many launches did you actually get to witness?
Well, all of them except the first one, if they were launched like during the first and second shift.
Okay, so the time of day then mattered because you would only be there during your shift.
Yes, and when I say during my shift, because we were normally on 12-hour shifts during that time. And it would either be all day and half of the second shift.
That's an interesting answer. The audience should know, and thank you for tuning in, audience, that when I interview someone like Earline, I do not ask for these answers up front, so my reactions are genuine. So the next question, we did launches. So the question is landings with the space shuttle. How many of those did you see land, as a percentage? Because we know that not all of the launches landed at Kennedy. Some did, but how many of them
The ones that landed at Kennedy, I actually saw, I think it was two of them. And when I say landed, I mean actually landed at the shuttle landing facility. But as for them coming in for land, we could always see them because they would fly over Kennedy Space Center before they come in for the direct landing.
Okay. This is not actually on the prepared questions, but I just thought about this. Since your career spans the Apollo era to the Space Shuttle era, what's the difference for you between the Apollo era and the Space Shuttle era as far as, was one harder? Was one easier? In terms of the aspects of your job?
Well, at the beginning of my job, actually, I started off in quality as working in the office, and then they came up with the mobility program for minorities, and that meant for all Black and the white women, and I was chosen to train, if I wanted to train as a progressive. And with the advantages of that, I decided I would take it. So that's when my job classification went from a clerk to a progressive and then to a quality technician.
So not significantly different except for just different spacecraft, then not so much different except for the changes in your job itself, the responsibilities and the duties of your job, I would say then. Is that correct?
Yes, it was a lot of difference because when I became, my job classification began as a quality inspector. That's when I had the ability to work alone as an inspector, and that's when I had the ability to work on the pad and other facilities that required systems and devices that was related to the shuttle program. And the ones that was prior to that, it was more like just office and not field work. And when I say field work, Ken, I mean out of the office, outside, and on actually systems. And that's the difference.
Yeah, because some of your work was obviously on paper and some of it was in the field, actually at the pad, if I'm understanding you correctly.
The times when I was on the pad, we signed in and signed out on the pad. We practically lived on the pad. And during the beginning of the shuttle program, my team, the team and I, and during that time was the BSI, which is the Boeing Services International Company. We were responsible for the modification of pad A and B. And during that time, we actually reported for work on the pad. As I say, we lived on the pad.
Okay, I hope it's fine with you that I'm altering some of the questions based on your experience, because the questions themselves, the prepared questions tend to be generic. And I think you can see why I'm doing that, to try to stay on topic with your job and not just ask you a bunch of prepared questions. Does it? So let's see. So with your type of work, did your work get different if someone visited from another facility? In other words, if a visitor came in, particularly with the payloads or with the shuttle itself having returned from different facilities as it did when it didn't land at Kennedy, did your work, your aspects of your job change because other people came in from other facilities like Vandenberg or something of that nature?
No, not really, because when the people came from places like Vandenberg or other areas, I won't say facilities, I would say areas, they would usually reside at the industrial area, and very seldom that they came out to the pad. If they came out to the pad just for a reason, instead of boarding the shuttle, they would come out as visitors. And we actually didn't have that much to do with them because they would have to have a special pass and getting into some of the areas. So,
So you didn't have to like lead the VIPs around or
oh no. They had
interact with
special
them.
people to do that. Yes.
How often did you have a personal contact or experience with an astronaut or hear an astronaut story? Did that aspect ever enter your job?
No, because our jobs was actually on systems itself. The only time I didn't have no contact, or we did not, with the astronauts because they usually resided in the industrial area, and it was at the building called the ONC. And the only time that they would come into the LC-39 area, which where I worked at, that was during the time of a launch, and then they would be in a vehicle pool, and they would be going directly to the pads to board the shuttle for liftoff. So I had no personal contact with
Well,
them.
in the performance of your job, you would certify that the pad was ready, and on launch day, you were basically not around, or how did that work?
Okay, the way it worked, we had certain systems that we were required to inspect, and what we said do pre-launch operations. By me being in quality, we were required to make sure that system is operational, and we would make sure we would have to run a procedure, and this procedure would be with more than one company. It would be a procedure that involved all companies that was involved in the liftoff. Once the shuttle got ready, it was okay. Everybody had to leave the pad, and the closest area that we could be was an area called the CCF, and it could only be a certain amount of people there and had to be on the roster, and everybody else would have to fall back to the VAB area because you were not allowed to stay in that area during the time of the launch.
The next question is about mementos. Did you receive items as mementos? Like some people nowadays, they get patches and jackets and shirts. Were you receiving items of that sort in your job, or was that saved for people in other job capacities?
Yes, during the Apollo program, we received envelopes with special stamps on it. And during the shuttle program, we received photos of the team and little plaques, tiny plaques. But as a personal employee, I received like the certifications of appreciations, and some of it were called awesome achievers. I guess that meant when you done something, you showed that you done it right. And I think another one I done was something like a witness, because that was by me being an inspector. One of the guys was working on something that had a discrepancy. I'm trying to remember. And that one was where I was able to do research and find out that there was a discrepancy on the item, and was able to stop actually the job.
Okay, we have a question come in from Facebook Messenger, and Ed wants to ask if you had anything to do with propellants and life support, such as breathing air, oxygen, and associated mission support for the Space Shuttle program.
Oh, yes. After I left the pad, I went to work. Matter of fact, the same job, but I went in the cryogenic or propellant north area. Two of those areas. One was, as I said, the CCF, and it was the converter compressor facility, and that supplied the liquid, the gas, the GN2, and the LH and the GH2, which means like the liquid hydrogen, and the gas is hydrogen, and it supplied the GN tube, which is the gaseous nitrogen. Now, the other area was cryogenics was known as propellants north, and that was where we received all our cryogenics. It was driven in from different areas, like the hydrogen came from New Orleans, and some of it came from MEMS and different plants, and we would have to receive that and sample it and distribute it to other areas. And as far as the pad, we were the group at Propellants North to actually load the shuttle with liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen. During that time, we call it the PRSD load, which means the only persons could be on the pad at that time could only be the people that was responsible for doing the job. And we were involved into that, our entire team.
The thing that the audience should know is that sometimes in giving the answers, they're so detailed, I have to go back and watch this so that I can learn everything that Earline said. Next questions actually have to do with Challenger and Columbia, but before I ask those, I want to ask you, were you actually out there with Apollo 1, the very first mission that did not launch, the one that ended in fire? Were you there that early?
Oh, well, yes, I did, and I'm trying to remember. If you can tell me what year, then I can tell you exactly where I was. What year was that?
I would have to actually look that up. Let me see if I can look that up.
No, that's okay. I was either working, yes, I had to be working for Bendix during that time. And that was the company you probably even don't remember.
Apollo 1 was damaged and destroyed on January 27th, 1967.
Oh, no. Well, that was before my time because I didn't come out there until 1970.
Okay. So the next few questions are about Challengers. So where were you during the Challenger accident? How did your work change post-Challenger? And what happened after the Challenger investigation? So.
Okay, I think mostly everybody remember where they was during that time. We were on 12-hour shifts, and I could remember I had talked to my daughter. She was in California, and I told her I was exhausted, and I was hoping that I could get some of the guys to come in the morning to pull my shift. And then I said that because I didn't think the shuttle would go because it was cold. It was very cold that day in Florida. I can remember it. During the liftoff time, my general manager, because I was sitting in the office with them, they had an office upstairs in the industrial area, and we were eating lunch right by the picture window where we could look and we could see the pad from the area we were sitting. And when they said liftoff, we looked out the window and all of a sudden we saw a ball of fire and we knew what had happened. And about seconds after then all communication was shut down. And I remember that. And after the post, number one, overtime stopped. So we didn't make any extra money. And during the investigation to see what the problem was and the reason why it happened, we just used that time to catch up on the maintenance of our system and to revise and make modifications to other devices and stuff that needed. We had extra time to do the things that we didn't have time to do before.
Going to clear my throat here. Yeah, that's a sad time for all of us who remember that era. I mean, like you say, we all remember that day vividly and where we were. It's kind of a historical marker in our personal timelines that we never get over. And I will say something different than I said in the previous podcast, and I will just simply say that after that, T plus 31 seconds was always the hold your breath and hope that everything keeps going point. So how did things change after Columbia? Is it essentially the same for the same three questions?
Um,
Or was it
yes,
more of
and
an
not
investigation?
more of an investigation and not actually a stop work, because the Columbia, it uh, had the strategy coming back in for landing, right? And that was on Saturday. I was home that day. Uh, I get a call from my girlfriend, and she says, the shutter blew up. I'm like, what do you mean? It's coming in for landing. They only blow up at launches, right? And that's when she said, you need to turn the television on. I found out later that um, they found out that the cause for it was something like debris or foam or something that was on the tank.
Yes,
Something
ma'am. It
like
was the
that.
debris that came off the tank. Someone with more technical knowledge would give a more accurate description, but you can like say that it was the packing where the tank connections were and debris coming off of that area, or it was ice that had formed due to the cryogenic materials that came off. So it was kind of like a combination of the two, I believe. But
Well,
obviously, I would defer to an expert on that.
Well, I would the tanks and stuff, they were joined together with a rubber gaskets, and the shuttle itself, because it was Rockwell that done that. They put on things you call towel, and they had to be put on with a certain pressure, which even though I wasn't involved in it, but I would say maybe one of those towels came loose or whatever. That was something that happened that came off of whatever it was, the tank or wing, and caused it to explode.
Yeah, with our previous episode and our previous guest Joyce Rosemary, I learned that you couldn't like scratch the tiles with your fingernail because that would cause major damage. So if anything is falling off the shuttle and therefore scratching those tiles, then you've lost the integrity of the heat tile, and so now you don't have the heat protection that you thought you had, and that's essentially what happened. So that's
Yes,
the non-technical explanation.
and you actually right, because the towel were put on. They had to be put on with some tight pressure. That was because of the heat that the ship would have to endure, and so they couldn't have no space at all. And you got to remember that the shuttle, it was loaded with liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen, and those two cryogenics was highly explosive. And if it had any leakage at all, it would explode.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is an interesting one. I hope the audience finds it interesting. Audience, if you have questions, by the way, you can submit questions on Facebook and YouTube. And if you tweet something on Twitter, I will try to find it, or you can send me a message, but I'm not seeing any tweets on Twitter. Unfortunately, the app that we use to do this podcast does not let us get direct linkage to Twitter and see the comments that people might create on Twitter. But getting back to the prepared question, what were your adolescent ambitions? Was this career one of those ambitions or close to one of those? And if not, what made you make the change to this type of career where you worked with the space program and the space shuttle?
Well,
like what did young Earline want to do when she was growing up?
well,
Not that you're not still young, but I'm saying, you know, when I walked around the living room, they said, "Oh, this kid's going to mess around with electrical stuff," and I ended up sort of doing that. But that's what I'm just saying. What did you think about doing when you were a child, or what did your mom or dad say? This is what Earline's going to do.
Well, my dad, what he wanted me to do And what my teachers wanted me to do in high school was totally opposite of what I'd done. Um, I I was very good in algebra and very good in chemistry. Um, and so my dad thought maybe I could come and go away to college to be a chemist, but that was not in my program. I just wanted to be grown too soon and put it like that. And as I got into the working world, and my first job was like with RCA, very young, and that had something to do with the Air Force. Then, yes, before I went to Kennedy Space Center, I worked on the Saturn program with Boeing. And then I transferred, which was off the Space Center, and then later I got a job and it was on the Space Center. So I guess that is the length of my employment. But the reason why I chose what I did, it was because of, should I say, need. The money was good and I needed it. I always wanted something that was different, and I wanted to be different. And now I know it's different from where it was during the time that I was working out there, but it was a man's world. A matter of fact, when I first went in the field, they didn't even have a restroom for the ladies. We had to have a way that we would do that, and I would honor them and they would honor me. And it was totally different, and I enjoyed it because I thought I was able to get all the attention, and because I usually was the only lady, and it was different because I would be looked at from the other people, the visitors that came out, and they would look like, they didn't say anything, but look like, what is she doing? And I guess I enjoyed the attention and definitely the money.
Yeah, that must have been interesting. So essentially, they were like lady in the restroom or something of that sort.
Oh, can I tell you one thing? I know I shouldn't say this. A joke was played on me one time in the building called the CCF. That was one restroom, one stall, and everybody was instructed that when you go in, you close the door. And before you enter, if the door is open, you got to check the stalls. So one day I went and the door was open. I checked the stall. I looked under. You don't check it with a door, you just look under. And there was some boots and work pants. I'm like, So I go, this is true. This is what they used to do to me. And I went back, I checked it again. The third time I checked it and I'm like, I think somebody's sick. So I goes to the guy's supervisor and I'm like, I think you got one of the guys that's sick in the restaurant. Well, the guys played a joke on me. They had a pair of work boots and coveralls just in the stall.
So we have another question from Ed. He asks, how many children do you have, and do any of them work in the space industry?
Oh, yes. My youngest son, he retired from the Air Force. And believe it or not, he's working in the same area where I worked, but he's working as a technician, cryogenic technician in the same area.
Okay. Now, I'm going to quickly check my email while I ask you the last question, because I did kind of like tell the viewers that they could hit me via email, but I'm not seeing any email questions, so I don't think we're missing anything. And I quickly checked Twitter. I don't think we're missing anything there either. So it doesn't look like we're missing any questions. So I'm going to go to the last question. And viewers, if you have a question, or Ed, if you've got another one, hit us up real quick here, because we're getting near the end of the show. So Earline, the final question is, what did you want to tell the audience that neither I or the audience asked you a question about? And before you answer, I do know that you sent me some photos, so if it's on those photos, we need to bring those up. So,
according to the photos, I told you that we were responsible for the modification of the pads. But one thing I didn't tell you was at the movement of the transportation of the shuttle, it was stacked. And onto a piece of equipment that was called the MLP, which is meant the mobilites. It was a platform, a huge platform. It looked like the deck of a ship. And they would stack it on there, and it would be stacked in the building called the VAB. And it would be moved from that building to the pad on something that is called the crawler transporter. And I think I sent you a photo of that. That was
Yeah,
one
I'm
of the
trying
most.
to load those now. So if you can like continue to talk about those, because one thing about the software that I use is I can't like load up multiple things all at the same time. I wish I could, but I'm trying to find those photos really quick here. So just give me a second. Is there anything else that you have, some interesting experience that you want to relate?
Other than we had to endure a lot of height, especially when the shutter is on the pad. It was enclosed with a structure called the FSS, which was the fixed surface structure, and that would have different platforms with the elevator for you to go to different platforms to work in different areas in the shuttle. But I did not go inside the shuttle. We only done the systems that were located outside of the shuttle. But the people that went inside the shuttle, they usually worked with Rockwell, and we had to prepare and make sure the area was safe and clear for them to get up on different levels of the shuttle to work, and that was different.
Okay. We had a question come in while I'm searching for your files, so let's see what Ed wants to know. If there was a do-over with your life choices, what would you change, if any? And is there any advice you can give to young people aspiring to work in this industry?
The advice that I could give the people that want to work in space shuttle or whatever program that we have on the Space Center, I will say that you can do it because the reason why I said that, my brother came to live with me, and he was going to college to be a technician for doing X-ray machines at the hospital. And then he said, well, I don't want to be like you, sister. And I'm like, okay, well, you got to go to school for technical. And so he ended up working at the Space Center technical. So I would advise everybody and tell them it's different. It's totally different.
Okay. I'm having some difficulty with my computer. I'm sorry about that, but let's see if I can resolve it. I might have to open these files another way and just like copy the directories so that I can open the files. Let's see. So let's see. Okay. I see the files. I just having an interesting time trying to load them. So let's see if it lets me load them. It's just being temperamental. And that's one of the drawbacks of doing this live is sometimes things don't work immediately. So I'll just see if I can get them to work.
One thing, Ken, one thing I forgot to tell you, a lot of people didn't understand. During those years of working out there, I actually worked for, I think it was 4 or 5 companies. But what happened, we were union people, and you would be working for one company, like say December 31st, and at 001 January 1, you began working for another company with the same benefits, same seniority, same job. It was the only thing different was the name of the company.
Right. So you just would transfer to a new company
Right.
each time that a contract changed.
Same contract.
When that happened, that your contract changed, did that cause you to have to get a new badge, or was your
Yes,
badge more?
yes, because on our badges, it stated our name and the contractor that we worked for. Because we actually worked for a contractor, not totally NASA, but the contractor worked under NASA's rules and regulations.
Okay, so I've managed to get your photographs in a place where I can load them. So give me just a second here. Just got to do a couple of clicks so that we can bring up the first photo. And that photo is up, and I can make it bigger. So that's possibly maybe a little bit bigger than that. That's probably getting almost as close as big as it can get. But that might work a little bit better. So maybe the audience can see that, and I can put that full screen. And so this is one of your photos, and you can tell the audience that this is, I'm trying to look at the screen, it's so small. Do you know what shuttle this is?
No, I don't. Matter of fact, I don't think it was listed on the photo, but this is a photo of actually a shuttle when it's stacked to go to the pad.
Right. That's
tank,
what your notes to me say, is that it's the shuttle on the pad.
right.
And
But
then,
this is not on the pad. The one that it's on a crawler transporter, and I think this is it. But you cannot see the crawler transporter because the shuttle is mounted on an area called the mobile launcher platform. And okay, now you can see underneath. You see this big monster called the crawler transporter, and it takes it 1 day to move from the VAV to the pad. And
okay, Ed has chimed in and says that this is Endeavor. So I guess Ed is able to read it, or he just knows his shuttles really well.
okay, yeah, he got to know, because I didn't know which one it was.
Okay, and so we're going to go back to the files, and I'm going to take that down for a second and put us back on screen, and then I'm going to change to the other photo. So this is the second photo that I have loaded, and I will make it a little bit larger and scroll around so you can see it better. And this is your second photo. And this is the shuttle landing at the shuttle landing field.
Right.
And
it's coming in for what we call the touchdown.
And I will put you back on screen with me, and then we will go load up the third photo. And I think the audience will recognize the lady in this photo when I put it up. And I will scale that a little bit so the audience can see it better. And scroll up for you. So there you are.
Yeah, the lady in that photo is me in the younger days, and you can the shuttle in the background. That's when we had finished all the modifications of the pad, and the shuttle was on the pad for what we call a fit check. Because before we could get in, make sure it was fully operational, they had to bring the shuttle in and make sure it fitted the pad. And they would be able to hook up systems like the sound suppression system and everything that go to it. So we called it the fit check right before they got ready to actually start the shuttle program.
And the audience can note that this is the all-white shuttle. So this is back in the early missions when they still painted the tank white.
Right. That was the one that we done the fit check with at the beginning of the shuttle program after the pads had been modified.
So is this actually the Enterprise and not one of the flying shuttles? Or because the Enterprise was the mock-up shuttle that was done for early testing.
Okay, that was the test shuttle. Just like I said, a fit check. That's what I meant, testing for testing.
Right. So this is not the initial Columbia. This is the
No.
Enterprise.
Right.
Oh, that's interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions. Ed doesn't have any more for us unless he jumps in here with another question here quite quick. So I will double check just to make sure that we don't have any questions in the actual chat room for the page. We don't. And I will double check Twitter just to make sure we haven't suddenly gained a question there, and we don't. So unless there's anything else you want to add, we can wrap this up for today.
I think that's all I have to add unless you have another question.
No, I think we've learned quite a bit from you. And as I said, I'm going to have to rewatch so that I can learn all the answers that, being the host doesn't allow me to actually savor as the show goes along. So to our audience, thank you for watching Slightly Off Axis podcast. If you have questions or wish to be a guest on air, contact us via our social media messaging or call 321-613-8591 or email us at kenotto21@yahoo.com. Guests should either provide a phone number via messaging via their call or text or email. And our closing phrase is kindness is goodness. Share some goodness with others today. We've certainly had kindness and goodness from Earline, who has shared her time with us today. And we thank you, Earline, for being with us.
And thank you.
To close out the show, let me just get the show close ready, which takes a couple of clicks. So let me find the show close and that video file that we load for the close of the show.
All right, liftoff, and the clock has started.
Roger, 0G, and I feel fine. Capsule is turning around.
Godspeed, John Glenn.
I feel the liftoff. The clock has started.
This is a new and strange environment at first, this suddenly finding yourself in orbit.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff. 32 minutes past the hour. Liftoff on Apollo 11.
Welcome home, Columbia. Beautiful, beautiful.
So how's to take it up to hangar, Joe?
We're going to dust it off first.
So you ever been to Disneyland?
Affirmative.
That was definitely an e-ticket.
Roger that, Sally.
3, 2, 1,
0.
And liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower.